All right, y'all. Let's practice finding some time zones. Remember, we've got a big world, so we divide it up into time zones so that everywhere in the world the sun rises and sets at approximately the same time. That means while it might be midnight in one time zone, it could be noon in another. We can use maps like these to help us find the time difference between two locations on the Earth. Our first question is, when it is 12 p.m. noon in London, UK, it is what time in Jakarta, Indonesia? First, we need to find London on the map. And there it is. Now let's see what time zone London is in. If we drop straight down, we can see that London is in the 0-hour time zone, right on the prime meridian. The color of London, orange, matches that orange time zone. Time zones don't move in perfectly straight lines, so it's really important to make sure your colors match. Now we have to find the other city, Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta's all the way over there, and there's its matching yellow time zone. We can get from London to Jakarta by moving 7 time zones to the east. And when we move to the east, we know we're 7 hours later in the day. So if it is noon in London, it is 7 p.m. in Jakarta. Next problem. When it is 12 p.m., noon, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, it is what time in Los Angeles, California? Let's find Sao Paulo and its matching time zone. Now let's find Los Angeles and its time zone. We can see that from Sao Paulo, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 time zones before we get to Los Angeles. So there's a 5-hour time difference between Sao Paulo and Los Angeles. Because we're moving west, Los Angeles has an earlier time than Sao Paulo. So we'll count backwards 5 hours. 12 p.m., 11 a.m., 10 a.m., 9 a.m., 8 a.m., 7 a.m. When it is 12 noon in Sao Paulo, it is 7 a.m. in Los Angeles. And we're back to London. When it is noon, 12 p.m. noon in London, UK, it is what time in New York City? Here's London. There's its time zone. Here's New York. And there's its time zone. In Abington, Pennsylvania, we are in the same time zone as New York. London is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 time zones away from New York. And because New York is to the west, it is earlier in the day. So if it is noon in London, it is 5 hours earlier, or 7 a.m. in New York. Now let's look at Toronto, Canada. When it is 8 a.m. in Toronto, it is what time in Istanbul, Turkey? Here's Toronto. And there's its matching time zone. Got cut off a little bit at the bottom, but that's okay. Here's Istanbul. And here's its matching time zone. Take a moment and count. How many time zones apart are they? Toronto is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 time zones away from Istanbul. Istanbul is to the east of Toronto. So should we add or subtract hours? Because it's to the east, we should add hours. Istanbul is later in the day than Toronto. So if it's 8 a.m. in Toronto, what time is it in Istanbul? If it's 8 a.m. in Toronto, it is 7 hours later, 3 p.m. in Istanbul, Turkey. When it's 3 a.m. in Chicago, it is what time in Mexico City, Mexico? Let's find Chicago. It's in that purple time zone. And let's find Mexico City. Mexico City is in that same purple time zone. They're not directly north and south of each other, but because they're in the same time zone, they are in the same time. So when it is 3 a.m. in Chicago, it is 3 a.m. in Mexico City, Mexico. Let's compare Cairo to Sydney. When it is 2 p.m. in Cairo, Egypt, it is blank in Sydney, Australia. Here's Cairo. And here's Sydney. How many time zones apart are Cairo and Sydney? Because we're moving from Cairo east to Sydney, are we adding hours or taking them away? If it's 2 p.m. in Cairo, Egypt, what time is it in Sydney? The correct answer, when it's 2 p.m. in Cairo, Egypt, it is 10 p.m. in Sydney, Australia. There is an 8-hour time difference, and Sydney is 8 hours ahead. When it is 9 p.m. in Houston, Texas, it is what time in Anchorage, Alaska? Houston is right on the Gulf of Mexico in this purple time zone. Alaska, Anchorage, is over here. Now, if you just dropped straight down from Alaska, straight south, it would look like Anchorage is in the purple -10 time zone. But Alaska isn't purple. Alaska is yellow. So here's one of those cases where time zones aren't necessarily drawn in straight lines. All of Alaska, including those little islands to the east, are in the yellow -9 time zone. Make sure you use that number when you're finding the time difference. How many time zones apart are Houston and Anchorage? Anchorage is to the west of Houston, so is it earlier or later? When it's 9 p.m. in Houston, what time is it in Anchorage? And the correct answer is, when it is 9 p.m. in Houston, Texas, it is 6 p.m. in Anchorage, Alaska, because Anchorage is 3 hours earlier than Houston.